Hello again, and welcome into another episode of Interrupting Racism. My name is Brian Prawitz, and I'm the host of this streamcast, which is coming to you just about once a week. But of course, you can watch this on Facebook and YouTube after the fact, and we hope that you share this with your friends if you find the conversation to be worth sharing, and we sure hope that it is. Interrupting Racism started with the idea that we need to get some really good conversations with a diverse aspect of people in the state of Oregon. Let's find some leaders and interview them and share what they know with people throughout the state of Oregon and hopefully around the country. And that's the point of Interrupting Racism. And Interrupting Racism has become, I would say, co-sponsored, if you will, or maybe a partnership with ALF, the American Leadership Forum of Oregon. And we interview ALF Senior Fellows, everybody that has been on the program, except for one, I guess I should say. Most of the people that have been on the program are people who've gone through and completed the ALF year. Basically, they are senior fellows, which means they have had an experience that is unlike just about anything I've ever experienced. I'm ALF Class 34, and in my experience, I was introduced to a whole bunch of people I would have not been exposed to, and develop relationships with people who do exactly what's on my shirt. Exactly what is on my shirt is what has happened with my experience with ALF. I have diversified my knowledge because I have diversified my friends, and I would encourage you to learn more about ALF so you can meet incredible people in the state of Oregon, leaders around the state who have unique perspectives that could very well change the way you look at the world, give you another lens. And one of the people that has completed the ALF experience, who is our guest today, is Pam Norr. She is an executive director in healthcare. She's a graduate of class of 36. And Pam, welcome to Interrupting Racism.
Well, thank you very much. It's nice to be here.
I'm very glad to get some time with you today, coming to us from Medford. What I have here in my notes, Pam, is that you are passionate about rural access to food, healthcare, and other services. And I just want to give people kind of a snapshot on what role you're playing right now. Where have we seen your name in the past? Kind of give us a snapshot of your expertise and the field that you're working in.
Well, sure. I come from nonprofit healthcare, mostly in Northern California, some in Southern California. And in Oregon, I have run mid to large nonprofits. And most recently at Access in Southern Oregon, which was Food, Warmth, and Shelter. Really helping support those whose voices were marginalized and struggling with homelessness, hunger, and needing support to pay bills.
Excellent. And our conversation today has a couple of threads in this whole conversation around the battle for social justice and equity. And even though the title of our streamcast is Interrupting Racism, you have a different fight that you are a part of. Why don't you kind of set people up for the conversation we're going to have to give us an idea of what lane we're going to be traveling in when it comes to trying to find equity for marginalized populations?
I do have a little bit of a different lane. I mean, of course, I am committed to supporting, like your shirt says, diversifying your friends, to diversify your understanding of the world. And I think there's no better sentiment than what your shirt says. I completely believe that. My journey has to do with my kid, who is 25 years old. I have two kids. And my eldest came out as gay and non-binary as around 13 years old, and has since decided that he is a he, was born cisgender female, and is now going through testosterone and transitioning to male. And so my perspective on diversity, equity, and inclusion is a big part of the discussion of LGBTQIA+, and how my lens has changed throughout his life, but also living in Southern Oregon, and how I help him navigate and support him in navigating his acceptance there, and integrating into the community, finding a job, getting healthcare, all of the things that are challenging as an LGBTQIA+ person.
So take me through the initials, LGBTQIA. I remember that was one of the first questions I had for you. What is IA plus?
Oh gosh, let me see. I didn't know there was going to be a test.
Oh, I'm sorry. Well,
It's okay. Let me try. Lesbian, LG, gay, bisexual, LGBT, transgender, Q, queer, I, intersex, A, asexual, M plus for all other things that are not included in those in the alphabet soup of that. And he and I have had discussions before about the preferred pronouns of she, her, he, him, they, them. And I, as an English major in college, I really struggled with the they, them, and saying that there needs to be some different word that supports the community who doesn't feel cisgender or as a identified gender. And his perspective was, Mom, that's really not for you to come up with. And if it doesn't bother me as a they, them, perhaps it shouldn't bother you as a she, her. So really good lessons I learned from his journey.
And just you can kind of hear that caution in your voice as you describe your own child, as you're saying he, born a girl, transitioning to being a male, being a man. And it's just all, it's just that, but it's okay, right? I mean, if we're doing this out of respect for the feeling of the people we're referring to, and you and I think we're about the same age, so we're the parent in the picture. And it's like you got to try to get comfortable with it. But just like you said, like if you have that conversation with him to say, I'm struggling with this thing, it seems like that can begin the process of sort of like, I don't know, co-learning or opening things up or getting comfortable to a point where, and the goal, by the way, the comfort is to support your child for whom you are rooting for. And so it's incumbent upon you, me, to learn some stuff.
Yeah, and it's not even rooting for. I'm fighting for him. I mean, it is tough. This has been a journey since he was 13. So, 20, it's been a long time, 12 years, 13 years of accepting who he is. And I think when you and I talked earlier, it was never a surprise to me. And I was totally supportive of it at any time. It wasn't something that was, that I struggled with. What I have struggled with in it is transitioning his name and his pronouns to appropriately accept who he is. And if for some reason changed again, no problem. But, it's just like, you meet somebody walking their dog and their dog you say, oh, isn't she cute? Because you have a female animal. And they go, no, it's a dog. And you go, oh, okay, I'm sorry. Isn't he cute? It's just not, we don't have problems transitioning our mind in so many other ways. But talking about the discomfort and the challenges that come along with how we express our feelings or express our thoughts, or, an English major transitioning to they, them, when that has always been a plural to me. Once you get it's just not a big deal. And I think you're right that it's talking about that and having those discussions and feeling like, this may be hard for me, so stick with me and please remind me when I do it wrong, because I want to be sensitive to what he needs and what the population needs. It's not even just my kid, it's everybody's kids and everybody's friends and partners and parents and everything. It's just all of us.
This conversation with you comes on the heels of a conversation I had with a friend that I've had for years who was and is still a baseball coach and an athlete and a jock whose child came out as gay, and then also is going through this process of changing genders. And if you want to see a guy struggle with that, this conversation took place, and I'm watching him. This is a very conservative family proclaiming, Christianity, and the grandparents especially struggling with it and some of the terms. And I'm watching this guy that I've known a long time, my friend, who's, kind of I don't know, it's maybe stereotypical or something, but, like a jock, like a dude trying to figure out how to address his own child. But what was at stake for him was he knew what the stats say. He knows how hard life becomes for a transgendered child. The suicide rate goes way up. There's all kinds of, just the stats are just bad. I mean, it's just a tough way to go. So I'm a little bit prepared for this conversation and that uneasiness as you talk about it, because I've watched it in a friend of mine whose absolute love for their child is paramount over all of these other things. And then, yes, he is set to fight for his child, even within the family. Have you experienced that as well?
A little bit. So my son's grandparents, so my parents and my husband's parents, didn't understand it. I don't say that they were opposed to it anyway. It was just they didn't understand what was wrong with who you were. Why would you want to do this to yourself? Because you're going to face such prejudice and anger and lack of understanding, the lack of knowledge concept. So that was the challenge, but not in our family. We didn't face that rebellion or that anger at his choice. We sure do in the community, and to the point of just getting health care or in employment has been a challenge of ensuring that he is treated with respect and dignity just as everybody else would be, and not facing discrimination. And so that's what we fight for. And that has been a challenge. He has been depressed, and that has been really hard. And I would encourage your friend and anybody who's facing a family member going through this to reach out. There are organizations in Oregon, maybe not in Southern Oregon, but closer to Eugene and Portland, that support parents of transgender kids. And reaching out to people that they know are going through it or have gone through it, it's incredibly powerful and helpful in supporting that person, and also having a common voice in supporting our kids in a more global place.
I know that you wanted to make sure that we made it clear as well that neither one of us are experts on this. And I don't doubt anybody really is if they are suddenly finding themselves on a journey like this. And so, but I don't mind at all, obviously, having the conversation with you, because you're a real life expert, because you're actually going through it. So your experience and the way your perceptions maybe that have changed along the way, to me, is the valuable part of this conversation, because there has to be other people that are going through this, and we'll talk about that equity battle just a little bit. But as far as maybe your perceptions changing through this, did anything, how were you affected as you suddenly found yourself with a gay 13-year-old at first, and now a child that wanted to go through gender reassignment?
Well, I have always professed to be accepting and supportive of differing points of views. But I found when Mar wanted to go through transition, that was a little bit harder for me to comprehend, not because it was in my family, but just because it was such a bigger process than I had anticipated. So I think that perception changed. Obviously you don't have any knowledge of gender reassignment surgery until you have to go through it with your kid, and what that feels like, what that looks like, the length of time, how much it costs, all the things that if they're not in your sphere, you're just not thinking about that. So the perception of what that looks like and how that impacts him, and how it impacts the family, and how fighting for those rights for people to have that happen is a big part of my transition of where I am thinking of how I can best support him and the community.
Yeah, because you are in Southern Oregon, as you mentioned, the amount of support here. I'm in Roseburg, you're in Medford. And I know, and like I said, I have my one friend, but I also know there's a PFLAG organization here in town, and that's where people are attracted to at least find a little bit of support. And yeah, I mean, okay, so let's talk about the local environment that you live in. What has it been like, and where have you found support?
Well, so we're from Los Angeles originally, and again, in Oregon, we lived in Bend, so a little bit different. But even in Bend, and we've been in Medford for about 4.5 years now, there's not a lot of PFLAG support in either of those communities, and certainly not in Southern Oregon. And if at some point I have some energy and ability to do that, I would love to help support that effort. I know that there is some in Ashland, which is about 11 miles south of us. But for him, it's really hard. It's really difficult to connect and to find that support. He's 25, so he's not almost 26. So he's not, at the 17, 18, 19 years old where there's a larger group of friends. It's hard for him, especially in COVID times, to get out and meet people. And I think that is important to have a community. And so I think he's considering going someplace else.
Yeah. Do you find yourself discovering parallels between what you're talking about just now and some of the things you're seeing around Black Lives Matter?
Absolutely. I think anytime there's a marginalized voice, it is incumbent upon the rest of us to help support and fight for that marginalized voice, because it's marginalized. So if there are more people supporting and making an effort, that voice gets louder and amplified and more impactful. And that's what I try to do for my kid and for the community that he's in, but also what I try to do when I can from Black Lives Matter. Again, Southern Oregon, different situation, but I just spent the last 2 weekends in Portland supporting that effort and just doing what I can to, as you say, interrupt racism and protest the status quo and really just make a voice be heard.
Sure. I think about the privilege conversation that we had in our ALF experience when it dawned on me how I'm a product of this system that is tilted in my favor. I'm a white, educated, middle class, hetero man. So, I mean, check the boxes of all the places that, are potentially do have that advantage, or do take the word potentially out, do have an advantage. The privilege that comes with that position. And I remember in our we did one of those privilege constellations, and if you had to say yes, you stepped forward, and if you said no to the things, you moved out to the back. And the design of that is so that people with the most privilege are on the outside of this circle, and the people who had gone through a lot of discrimination and issues were in the middle. And it really rocked my world. But the four of us on the outside were all white men from somewhat, sometimes rural Oregon. But the conversation that happened after that was, okay, well, what do we do with this? And it's kind of the question I posed to you just a little bit. We say, what do we do then? And especially for those of us in a privileged position, how can we make a difference for whether we're talking about, let's just say, any marginalized population? When you think about people in power or in privilege, what is it that we could do to try to help?
Well, again, I'm so not an expert. I'm so young and new to all of this. But for me, what I do is, like you said, I try and talk to those who may have a differing opinion than I do. And sometimes that's really uncomfortable. I actually really like challenge to status quo. I like the poking at things. But my heart races when I try and talk about something that I am not necessarily as educated and knowledgeable about, but something I'm passionate about supporting. So I think talking about it with each other, with larger groups of people we disagree with, we were talking earlier about Instagram and Facebook, and the people on your feed are probably ones that agree with you or that you agree with. And so posting something about an issue is probably not going to change anybody's mind. So helping to have discussions with people that you're going to not talk to anymore because you have political differences or philosophical beliefs that are disparaging, or different, then you want to have those conversations. So for me, that's where I try and start. And also supporting, where you can, supporting those who are trying to make a difference, supporting Black Lives Matter, supporting Black-owned business, the Innocence Project, doing things that are trying to further that cause, that path.
Well, let me pose it to you this way. As the parent of a transgender child, what would you ask? What is it? You talked about their job. You talked about the way they're treated by other people. I mean, you don't have to be an expert in privilege to be able to say, here are the things that are important to me for the sake of my own child. Like, for instance, I would imagine that, and I'm sure of this, he's got skill sets, he's got skills. He should be viewed by his skills probably than whatever he looks like. If it's obvious somehow that he's gone through this process, I mean, what do you think about if I say, what would you like to say as the parent of a child who's gone through this to try to maybe break through to give your child a better chance at success, the success that he deserves? Or should at least have the opportunity to explore?
Absolutely. So, like for instance, in the job situation, because he does have a degree in history, he's getting his master's in history. He wants to curate museums or do research, archiving, that type of thing. But when you're judged on how you look in any situation without a tolerance to that, and don't dig deeper to get to know what his interests are, what he's good at, because he's phenomenally smart, really just amazing at everything he does. And to not get to know him as a person, just like anybody, if you don't get to know them as a person just based on how they look, you're missing out on the person. And I think that is a disservice to people of color, to anybody who's LGBTQIA+, to anybody. And reverse to that, with privilege as a white, middle-aged, middle-class person, to judge me the other way is wrong, because I could be a horrible human. I'm not. I could be, really just awful, but you assume, people make assumptions. And so I think it's that getting back to communicating and having a conversation and talking about not just the issue, but about the people. Because when you get to know people, it usually changes your mind.
Yeah. Well, we could be talking about racism. We could be talking about all kinds of topics and have that be the same thing that would be said.
Right.
Boy, this plays into a lot of things that I think about. Like when you see a long-haired tattooed person walking down the street towards you, what perceptions pop in your head and what do you think about them? And how do you ever break those down? I mean, it takes an effort to reach out to that person and skip past the wrapper, if you will, and get in to know the person. And my experience in ALF, and I'd love to know if you agree with this or not, my experience in ALF really ruined all the perceptions that I had been grown up with on any of these topics. And the hardest struggle for me was when I got to know people who were African American. And I found myself a little bit like what you were saying kind of at the beginning on the perception of a transgender person. All of a sudden now you had one. And so you even said, have always been open and accepting, and towards people of all kinds of different situations. But then all of a sudden you're actually faced with whatever your perceptions actually were, and sometimes it's a real shock when you realize, oh my gosh, I've been harboring some thoughts that actually are based in racism, and maybe it's because of the environment I was brought up in, or maybe that. Wow, what a shock! I think we're touching on some white fragility here on some level, I'm pretty sure.
Absolutely.
And I don't know what the parallel is for the LGBTQIA plus world. I don't know if I just don't know. But there is that moment when the reality of the situation kind of shocks you, and you realize, gosh, I may have been harboring some thoughts here that now all of a sudden are exposed. And that's very hard, and it's very uncomfortable. But man, once you get past that and you see into the eyes of a person who you thought you knew because of some label, it's totally life-changing.
Yeah, I totally agree.
Yeah. What are, of all the things that are going on out there right now, and you may have tipped your hand on this answer earlier, but what, from George Floyd to the voting to the whole Black Lives Matter effort, what is really occupying your mind right now on the whole social justice spectrum of all the things we see happening?
There's just so much, right? There's so much. I can't even keep up with it. And, I was just thinking today about people's access to quality healthcare if they have COVID, and the inequity of, say, for instance, the president having access to drugs and healthcare, and people of color or those whose lives are marginalized, homeless, those who struggle with homelessness, not having that. And so I think it just gets down to inequity for me right now. I feel as though we've just got so much that we need to fight for. And I don't want to become so exhausted by all the issues that I don't fight. So it's that trying to find the energy within myself to continue the conversation like this, to go out there and really try and make a difference. And sometimes that's really uncomfortable and really hard and exhausting. And so I think all of it, I'm just, I just cried with George Floyd and Breonna Taylor and all the other hundreds and thousands of people that have been murdered. And it's exhausting, and it's horrifying. And when it's horrifying, it makes it really difficult. And then you add COVID on top of that and all the other things that are going on in the world. And it's just a lot. And I want to do my best to support and help and fight.
Very, it's, good, well put. And I think at some point it's just like any baby step forward is still progress,
Yeah.
And yet there are big steps that can be taken. And my biggest fear is that when that big step needs to be taken, I don't identify it at the time or something, like,
I bet you will.
My intent's in the right place, but when there's a big step that needs to be taken, I hope I don't take a baby step and pat myself on the back, which is a fear I have. But I feel you when you're with what you said there. What about any suggestions on books or documentaries or anything that you've seen lately that stand out in your mind that you might want to direct people toward? I always like doing this because this creates a little bit of a resource library for us to put links for people to pick up.
Yeah, I haven't read anything that I can recommend lately. There's just so much. With ALF, I went through ALF. We read several of those books. We passed them around. And White Fragility was one of them, which was really hard to read. It was and I wouldn't feel the way I feel, I don't think, if I hadn't gone through ALF. So when you talk about at the beginning of this, looking into it, it is life-changing. And even though my year is different than your year, it doesn't make it any less impactful. And I know that the conversations that occur in ALF, not only in our classes, but in meeting people in other communities, it just made a huge difference for me.
Well, I told you I was going to bring this up, so I want to make sure that we talk about this before I go. But you and I met before when Class 36 came through Roseburg, and we had an uncomfortable moment as well. But it actually is a definition of what ALF is, and I want to share it because I think it's just there's a well, I'll just explain it, and people can see why I want to bring it up. So I was asked as an ALF alum to come and speak to Class 36 when they came through Roseburg. If you don't know, what happens is every month over the course of a year, the ALF class that's in session goes to a different community. So you learn the local history and you see some local people and you hear kind of what's going on in that town. When the ALF class came to Roseburg, a big part of the conversation was around homelessness. And I'm a Roseburg City Councilor. And so the natural conversation there was what's happening in Roseburg on homelessness. And Pam has a tremendous amount of passion for access to healthcare, as you've heard earlier, for the unhoused, and all kinds of other issues around them. When I got going on my normal kind of conversation around homelessness in Roseburg, a topic, by the way, I feel like I provide very little judgment, if any, toward the people we have on our streets and the unhoused. Pamela called me out. I said a thing about a guy sitting on a bench in front of our building, our city hall. I said, my point was that in Roseburg, I feel like anything that happens is personal to me. If you visit Roseburg and the traffic is bad and you tell me the traffic is bad, I might apologize for the traffic because I feel that much of a close tie. We
don't hold you responsible for that.
Yeah. And I mentioned this gentleman who sits on the bench in front of City Hall, and that it upset me because this person wasn't a very good ambassador for our community and these sorts of things. You stood straight up and you said, hey, you need to remember something. This is his town too, and you cannot forget that. And you challenged me, and it was memorable. In fact, that's one of maybe 2 or 3 memories I even have from that little visit. But time goes by and here we go. And then I'm emailing Pamela and saying, hey, will you come on the show and do something here on the Streamcast? And at some point, and I'm thankful for you that you even did this, because we could have gone through this whole thing and you would have never mentioned it and I wouldn't have remembered and it wouldn't have come up. But you pointed out, you asked, were you the person that came and talked to our class? And did I don't know if you said call you out, or did we have an exchange? And we did. And the grace that you offered to me for that moment was so important to me. It meant so much to me, partly because it stuck with me so strongly, not only because it was one of those uncomfortable moments where all of a sudden I was kind of getting called out, but the part of it was you were right. And I think about what you said all the time. Whenever it changed my thinking, it was something that I added to my own thought process when it came to assessing our unhoused in our community, to remember that even though they're on the street, they live here too, and this is their town as well. So you challenged me, and I thank you for that, but I thank you for the grace that you showed. And it is, in a nutshell, a picture of what ALF looks like, because we challenge one another and we say, think about it differently. And so there it is. I wanted to make sure people saw that, because it's a picture of how ALF works. And thank you once again, even though I've told you this offline before, thank you for, first of all, calling me out that day. Second of all, mentioning that we had the conversation, and then allowing for healing, because it was important. And so thank you for those things.
Oh, well, I appreciate that, because it sat with me too. And I think we talked about this. I was hot. I was not angry, but I wanted to say something. So I hope I said it I encourage you to consider that this gentleman's already a part of your community, but I have a feeling it probably came out a little harsher than that. And so I was trying to be aware and also apologize if it did. Again, it's a voice that is sometimes hard to hear with all the other sounds going on in the world. And so I'm grateful to you for considering his and others' perspectives. And thank you for letting me acknowledge if I was harsh.
You know, those situations and through, you don't, well, it's an example, right? It's an example of how we react to one another. And on one day, if everything's going fine, that conversation may or may not happen because you might not have been agitated to the point of saying something. And I don't know what forces are going on in your world. And
Yeah,
it kind of ties into some of what we just talked about with, surface versus getting to know someone. So
absolutely.
yeah, that was an important moment. And by the way, we are working on some sort of city endorsed plan to try to do something to help with emergency housing in our community. We've looked at Rogue Retreat and some of the things that they've done there. I certainly am not going to come on this program and speak for city council, but we've put in a lot of work. And so I feel a little bit more prepared and maybe more educated because of conversations just exactly like this and the experience we talked about. I think one final point on this part of our conversation is that ability to come back to a conversation and talk about it and find understanding and admit, I needed to be corrected there is also, I think, a huge part of the bigger picture that we're talking about with all of these issues is to be able to stop for half a second and just say, I might be part of the problem. Like, I might need to check myself on a few things here, I think is what we're missing in some of the conversations that we see and hear on social media and in the news.
I don't know part of the problem, but possibly part of just being open-minded enough to shift a little bit. But I do applaud the city of Roseburg for looking into helping those who are unhoused, because those who struggle with homelessness are just at risk for so many other things. And so thank you to the city for that. I know it is a challenging conversation to have when not everybody agrees with supporting those who are struggling with homelessness. I applaud you for doing it.
Well, hopefully we do it well. That's the biggest thing. Any other thoughts that you have that you want to share back out to the world? Any takeaways you're hoping that people grab onto?
Just really hope that everybody continues to have a conversation. We talked about this earlier. I think it's, like with ALF, it just opens your mind to differing points of view, and that just makes things easier, better to have more conversation. I think that's important, and peace is a big part of that.
Yeah. Well, thank you for your time today.
Thank you very much for having me. I appreciate it.
All right. Stand by. I'll put a little bow on this, and then we'll chat again before we sign off. So
okay.
That's Pam Norr, Executive Director in Healthcare, ALF alum from class 36. So you've seen it come up on the screen a few times. If you want to find out more about ALF, go to alforegon.org. ALF stands for American Leadership Forum. And if you want to get a hold of one of the shirts that you've seen on Interrupting Racism, visit speakupwithus.com. The profits from that website are going to go to Black United Fund of Portland for all the work they do with marginalized populations in the Tri-County area up there. Actually, I think they do work well outside of Portland as well. But we decided to launch that t-shirt website, generate a little money, and see what we can do to make a difference for people who are dealing with the realities of inequity and injustice and brutality and some of the other issues that we are all too aware of in this time. So thank you once again for being here on Interrupting Racism. Thank you to Pam for being on the program. We've got other great people lined up, so keep checking back and certainly subscribe and like what you see. If you're on YouTube, you can watch this live and comment, and we'll follow up with comments to that as well, and of course on Facebook as well. So thanks again for watching Interrupting Racism. We hope you have a great day, and we'll see you again.